are you saying that 2024 may be our last election in the United States?
Yeah. I mean, that Andrew came to me and wanted to talk about this because he's extremely worried about the electoral system, right? And its vulnerabilities, the particular vulnerabilities of the American electoral system and its constitution. And along with all the other stuff that we talked about, you know, when I wrote The Next Civil War, like I was very consciously trying to write stuff that I only felt certain of, which is very hard to do in the American context because everything gets caught up in, you know, flame wars and so on. And I only wanted to write about things that I know. And that's why I never ended up writing a chapter on electoral politics, right? Because everyone you talk to, you're just trying to triangulate opinions, and everyone has an agenda, and you don't actually know how things work. And Andrew came along and said, like, why don't I explain to you how American politics actually works, and we'll put it in a thriller. And, you know, to his credit, I asked him for two things. I said, you know, if I call, you have to return my call. Like, yeah, I know you're important and you're out fundraising and stuff like that, but I need the information quickly. And also I want you and your whole staff and everyone you know to tell me the actual truth. And that way I figured, you know, whatever happened, I would at least know how American politics works.
So the previous book, The Next Civil War, this is more of like an essay, a description of what's going on and things you've seen. And the last election, the book now, is actually more, it's a novel, but it's kind of predictive. Is that it?
Well, I would describe it as a paranoid political thriller, but accurate. Yeah. Right, where what we wanted to write was the most accurate political thriller that's ever been written. So we just got the absolute sort of core, like even boring details about the mechanics of how an election works, how and these systems that, you know, people are always shocked when things fall apart. But there's like, if you know why things work and how they work, it comes as no surprise, right?
So you've got so again, this is a fictional depiction based on all of these things you've seen and what's currently going on and what you like. It's kind of like what you feel could happen.
Yeah, I mean, there's kind of two aspects to it. So one is like the campaign stuff. So that was like, you know, like I asked Andrew, like, what are the three most important dates in a political campaign? Like, I'm trying to plot a novel here. Like, what are the dates? And he was like, first campaign fundraising report, second campaign fundraising report, third campaign fundraising report, right? And you realize talking to him, like, you know, so like, like one guy I talked to was a humanization coach who is this is a literal human being who's an ex-Broadway actor who goes around the country teaching politicians how to talk like a human being. Right, like, and he does some things like
not surprised.
And he does things like say something and then put a piece of Lego on another piece of Lego, or I'll ask you a question and then I'll throw you a wiffle ball and you catch the wiffle ball. And they do all these and this man does
is
not
it because
lack
they're lizards?
for work. No, the reason is that because their job is fundraising. Yeah. So what they do is they go into rooms and they give the same spiel 70,000 times, and by the time they've given it the 35,000th time that they're asked the same question and they give an answer, naturally, like, it's not really their fault, right? Yeah. It's just that they tune out, right? And so it was him and like, I talked to a real live opposition researcher, and I mean, you talk to one of these guys for 5 minutes, you think you realize, like, everything I wrote in The Next Civil War, not an optimistic book, but like 5 minutes talking to this guy, I was like, oh, it's way worse than I thought. I mean, it's way worse. Like, talking to the Oppo researcher, they kept saying, like, you know, I'm trying to plot a book. So it's like, okay, when do you release the scandals on this guy? And they kept saying, well, like, we unload the book here, and then it's like, well, you wait for their fundraising report come out, and then you unload the book on them then. And then after a while, I was like, hold on a minute. When you say unload the book, is there a book? And he's like, oh yeah, there's a book written on every American politician. And I was like, can I see one? And he's like, well, they're illegal to own, but I'll put one up on Google Docs and you can pull it down.
They're illegal to own?
Yeah, well, it's libel, right? Like, it's, you know, I mean.
So it's civil tort. They're all defamatory.
I mean, it's defamatory, right? Yeah. So I see one, like, of this random politician, and it's everyone they've ever sat down next to a party that said something horrible.
Wow.
It's every financial transaction they've ever been involved in. It's every tweet that could be construed a certain way. It's also, there was a part where it was like, this guy dated a female bodybuilder in high school. Can we do anything with that?
Wow.
Right? Like, everything that they could smear a guy with. And I was like, who in their right, what sensible, decent human being? Like, what would the book look like on me?
Yeah.
Right? Like on anyone, on all of us here in this
yeah.
room, right? Like, I mean, who in their right mind would do it?
And it's not just that; it's really easy to take things out of their contemporary context.
Oh, being a human being,
right?
Doing flawed things, making errors.
I'll give you an example of in 2016 there was a story in the New York Times, and it was considered to be highly dubious. And Dave Rubin gave his thoughts on the story. I can't remember exactly what it was. Mm-hmm. There's a video of me where I said, look, if you give me the New York Times or Dave Rubin, I'm going to trust Dave Rubin. Okay. Right. And then what happens now is people will take that clip and be like, Tim Pool thinks Dave Rubin is more credible than the New York Times, when I was making a specific reference to a single story. That's the kind of thing that can appear in books like this.
Oh, that would be one.
The opposition research.
Yeah, it would be like that, except it would be 7,000 of them.
And 7,000 times worse.
Yeah. And also much more dubious.
Right.
Like much more like, well, this is like, it probably is meaningless, but we could do this. So when I talk to, and the opposition researchers are like the most boring human beings you ever met in your life, like bank managers.
Yeah.
Right. And it's like, this is their job. This is what they do.
Have you ever seen Sherlock Holmes? What is it? Game of Shadows with Robert Downey Jr.?
I tried 15 minutes and I was like,
oh, you didn't like it?
As a Sherlock Holmes fan, I was like, this is the lowest form of Sherlock Holmes that's ever existed.
However, I do like in the story where, to use my pop culture references, that he finds the semi-automatic pistols. It's like turn of the century, 1900s.
Right.
And it's Moriarty basically saying war on an industrial level is coming and I'm going to own it. Right. And it was this interesting idea that the idea they're giving you is that for all of us right now, we understand industrialized warfare with machine guns and air raids. But before the Industrial Revolution, it was much more difficult to make weapons. For instance, I was researching about Civil War weaponry.
Right.
And the advances in rifle technology they're like 50 years apart. It's like they use smooth bore muskets for hundreds of years.
Right.
And then once we got to the industrial level, it's just all of a sudden everyone's got a semi-auto. It's crazy. What you're describing with opposition research today seems like the industrialization of politics, of political lawfare, where it used to be that there was a scandal on somebody, they'd bring it up. Now it's every politician has a book.
Yeah.
They're gonna make up anything they have to, and everyone is in a heightened sense of like rabbit level, exhilaration and fear.
Well, I would say it's partly that, but also the thing that I was amazed by, it's funny, because of course when you say it out loud, it's totally obvious. It's politics is about money. Like I knew that, we all knew that. I just had no idea that it was 12 hours of a politician's day. Yeah. Right? Like that is the job. Well, right. It is gaining attention in order to get money in order to gain attention. Right. Like, so it's partly the celebrification of this stuff and the mimetic warfare aspects of it. But like what they do all day is fundraise. That's what they are.
Do you think that's why Trump was such a unique political figure? And that's not trying to have a positive or negative cast on it. But do you think that he was different and in a way that, or a different type of politician because of the fact that he, now, not that I know that he did or did not have a book, but do you think that like they were scrambling? We got to come up with this with the Oppo research now when he came down the elevator. Oh well, because he'd teased it for so long.
There's so much Oppo research.
I'm not saying that there's. No, I'm not saying that it's not, but it's not correlated together.
So
the way
when you
that
talk to an Oppo researcher, I brought this up. Mm-hmm. I was like, "What's the point of scandal anymore?" Like there was a time I remember. I'm old enough to remember it, where George H.W. Bush, checking his watch, dominated a news cycle for 3-4 days.
Same thing happened with Biden when the troops came back.
Obama wearing a tan suit. That was like a news cycle. So
it wasn't a news cycle when Obama killed that kid Abdulrahman Al-Awlaki.
Anyway, it was not.
So Trump,
scandal free.
So opposition research very clearly, and they speak of it just this way, is like you are not looking for the bad things that they did. What you are looking for is the good parts of them that you then sour. Right. So there's a, gosh, I can't remember it, but you're not looking for bad things. Yeah. You're looking for the best part of people and suddenly to make it seem garbage. Yeah. So it's partly swift boating, but actually what you're doing is you're going into their base and just skewing it.
For people that don't know what swift boating is, it was looking at something that John Kerry had done. He was talking about something for Vietnam vets, I believe, and which was ostensibly a good thing, and they turned it around and made it seem like
that's right. He was
against vets, against everybody.
Yeah, he was a Vietnam vet. George W. Bush was a not a deserter, but like got out of it, and they managed to turn that. That is opposition research. So with the case of Trump, there's nothing to sour, right? Like, there's no point you were like what they actually should have done from an opposition research point of view is made fun of his hair, made fun of his virility, made made fun of his money, more like the fakeness of the money, right? Like that, but they couldn't quite bring themselves to do it. But Trump is invulnerable to the kind of opposition research that other politicians are absolutely vulnerable.
So you need innovations then.
Well, he's totally innovative. I mean, like in so many, I mean, it's kind of funny because it's like, is he an innovator or did he just react to a changing world? Right. I mean, you could say it either way. Like, I think I would be fine with either way. But basically, he understood that politics had become celebrity before anyone else.
He's WWE.
Yeah.
You like he's in the WWE Hall of Fame.
Yeah.
You want to get in the ring with this guy who knows how to hit someone in the back with a folding chair, and you've never experienced that. He's gonna roast you.
He literally is the heel turn.
Yeah.
Right. From WWE. Like that. I mean, that is the basis of his politics. Right.
It's amazing.
And I mean, it's hugely effective. I mean, it was one of the really depressing things talking to Andrew was like, we're figuring out like who could run. And Andrew was just like, look, they have to be celebrities and billionaires. Those are the only people who have a chance. It's like, they just skip so many levels.
Right. The skipping fundraising. If you are wealthy and you do not need to make phone calls and make promises, you've jumped the game.
Yeah, and you still would have to do it, but because the fundraising thing I learned is like, it's not necessarily even the money. It's that when people give you money, they fight for you.
Right.
Right. So it's like it's that when you get somebody to give you money, they are invested in you, literally. Right. And so that's more part of the political process.
So it's more psychological than actually about the money then.
Well, it's also that you're definitely going to vote. Yeah. I mean, if you gave $250 to somebody, like, you're definitely going to go and vote. So it's the same cycle of money and attention.